Welcome to the Slade Ham Experiment. Hi, hello, how are you? I'm Slade Ham. I begin this week like I begin every week with a toast and a contemplation that I could be doing this live in some capacity on YouTube or somewhere else. I think about the possibility every week and then I don't do it. We'll see. In a different week. It's been a good one on my end. I've been busy. I've caught up with some old friends. I've made some plans. I've lost some work. I've gained some work. Some things have happened. I have a full schedule up at sladeham.com. Some cool dates around the corner. I'll be at the Mucky Duck with the Outlaw Comics here in Houston, October 28th. And earlier that week, is it the 22nd or the 25th? I'm with Andy Huggins at the Vulcan Gas Company in Austin. So Austin, you've been asking. I'm coming. And then this last week, I had the pleasure, the privilege. When you got more talented friends than you, you're fortunate to watch people work at the top of their game is a luxury to have access to. I remember when I was out on the road with Ralphie May, that's not even who I'm referring to, but he was access to greatness. But I remember we were backstage. He was on stage. I was at the Majestic Theater and the Empire Theater butt up against each other in San Antonio. They share a stairwell and a green room and a bunch of space. And Ralphie was playing the same night as the Temptations. And I got to watch them from here to the camera away from me. Temptate. That's not I'm trying to noun the verb or verb the noun. The Temptations. It was like watching poetry. So this week, some good friends of mine. We always think, man, every day it's all just yesterday to me. But all these yesterdays add up to 20 years in some cases, 25. Long times. Good friends of mine in the band Candlebox were in town. And it was a night, remove the friendship. I'll speak of that in a minute. Because Kevin and Pete both share special places in my heart. But as a fan of rock and roll, as a child of the 90s, as a kid who's got a little grunge in all the crevices that you can find on my body, I saw Candlebox. Oh, I've seen them many times. It was the best show I've seen them have in a long time. It wasn't a full set. It was short. It was about an hour, maybe 45 minutes. Followed by Jerry Cantrell, who I never saw Alice in Chains live. It's a deep regret. The music was just that. It's a crunchy part of my history. And watching Jerry, second song, Them Bones. You know what I mean? You want a taste of the night? This is Candlebox. This is Candlebox with Far By. It's a song you know, but it's my friend Pete breaking into the guitar solo. And I got to see his soul come back out and play. And then Kevin hitting this long, what do you need me for? It's a little rock and roll. The only thing I taped that night. I'm usually very anti-tape at concerts. This was a small reunion amongst two friends on stage who have not played together in a very long time. Certainly not in front of my eyes. I wanted to capture the moment. Plus, he plays the shit out of that solo, and he hits that note, and it was worth recording. And then I put the damn thing back in my pocket, and I watched the show because I had all of Jerry Cantrell to come, playing so many of those Alice in Chains hits, and then some of his own, his solo stuff. Sure, but Alice in Chains. And then, you ever been a fan of somebody, not knowing you were a fan of somebody till you saw you? Oh yeah, I guess I've just always been a fan of yours. Bush closed out the show. Another 90s rock band you might know from everything. Zen, I think, was the first single. Come Down, Machine Head. Yeah, you know the sound. I didn't know I liked Gavin Rossdale as a I didn't know. Does that make me a little gay? Maybe. I don't know. He was so damn cool. When you just watch someone really in their element. I see it with comics a lot. When you're in the zone, you're in that spot. There's no question in my mind that the rest of the guys in the band Bush are making a nickel a night, and they're not the original people, and it's just Gavin Rossdale touring as Bush. I have no illusions about that not being the case. But that dude owned the stage for the whole show, and including some a cappella stuff and some going into the crowd stuff. And I've said it before, I'm probably as influenced in my stage presence by rock frontmen as I am by comedians. But it wasn't some pyrotechnic, crazy, acrobatic show. Although I do remember him in 1990, I'm going to mess this up, 8 perhaps, there was a concert. All right, you can catch me lying on myself now. 98, 99. Blockbuster. I should look this up. I could look this up. I'm not going to look this up. Blockbuster Video, which was a haven in the 90s. Oh, this blue and white heaven for adolescents. God, you'll never know. I may come back and revisit Blockbuster in a second. They sponsored a concert. Rockfest, was it? It was held in Dallas, Fort Worth, at Texas Motor Speedway, wherever that's at up there in DFW. And it was the biggest, at the time, I think the biggest concert event that had ever happened. There were like 500,000 people inside Texas Motor Speedway. Such a sweet time in media, too, because MTV had a tower and VH1 had a tower. They're all down in this gigantic infield area. The stage was all of 90s rock at the time. Third Eye Blind, Counting Crows were there. I remember the show was closed out by No Doubt and Bush. Collective Soul. It was a who's who of 90s rock. The Gin Blossoms, everyone was there. Matchbox 20, all of them. And he did this. He crawled out and did I always call it an Eddie Vedder because I remember seeing Eddie hang from the truss work before anybody. There was an old poster of him. It was like his silhouette hanging at this outdoor event. And then I think the music video for, was it Alive? It wasn't Even Flow. It was Alive maybe, where he did the stage dive from the upper rafters of that seat. Oh, man. Anyway. Gavin Rossdale climbed this thing and then crawled out on that truss work. He obviously didn't. Everything was fine. This was none of that. This was just a dude in his, I'm guessing, 40s, comfortable with himself and his music and the stage, and I was a little enthralled, man. So if you get a chance to go see some rock and roll, go do it. That was a damn good show, and thank you very much to my friends for just a wonderful evening together. It was so good to catch up. Blockbuster hasn't popped into my head in a hot minute, but when I said it, I got a warm, fuzzy, nostalgic, like having a fresh, Krispy Kreme donut where your heart would be. I miss that place. I lived within bike riding distance of a Blockbuster in Beaumont, my little Southeast Texas hometown. And we used to ride and pick out movies and video games to take back for the weekend, and you got to pick we're back to the core of my belief system here, that scarcity really is what's missing and lacking today. You only had a couple of movies that came out any given week, and there were only a couple of copies of that movie, and you had to get it. Like 25 people in a whole city could watch a movie on a Friday. They probably have more than that. 100 copies, maybe? You had to go get the physical thing, bring it home, put it in, set your VCR to fix the tracking. I used to watch anytime I knew this was my guilty pleasure. Anytime I knew in the 80s, any action movie that had Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Van Damme. It's hit or miss on Chuck Norris. I love Bruce Lee, so I went back and watched everything that he had done. And who else? I didn't care about Dolph Lundgren, really. The big three, Van Damme. But even push Van Damme off to the side, I'm only giving him credit. He tricked me with Bloodsport. It was so fantastic. And then everything else was just him being a cyborg, or him fighting his twin, or him doing what. The only cool Van Damme movie, there was Hard Target was good, I think, but I think that was John Woo. Am I making that up? The point is, the only real Van Damme we're talking about at all really is Bloodsport. I'm forgetting something that's going to make somebody leave a comment that's going to make me feel so dumb, like this wasn't really part of my childhood, and I don't deserve it. But it's just because this is in the moment, and I've done no research. So shove Van Damme, put him in the kitchen between two chairs while we talk about Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, who were, I would call their back. That was in the 80s. That was almost an action hero arms race, I think. Is that a good definition? That the two of them, who started what? I don't remember what was first, but you had Rocky and Rambo, which were the two coolest people in the entire world, till Schwarzenegger fought the Predator and then was the Terminator. How you supposed to beat all that? And then it was just back and forth between the two of them to see who could kill the most people in a movie. I really think, I bet they called each. How many people you kill in this next one? 121. All right, you don't know how many people I'm gonna kill in Total Recall. Except he said it like you don't know how many people. That's the cheapest impression in all comedy, and I can't even do it. That was a good era when remember when you could just hang a whole movie's plot on something that doesn't even exist anymore? Or when, like, the TV shows from the here's what I've been doing. TV shows from the 80s. If you go back, or 90s, I think on Amazon Prime right now, you can go watch the old MacGyver episodes. Not the new ones. I've never seen a new one. They're probably the same thing. But the old ones. Richard Dean Anderson, was that his name? Mac. And the amount of episodes that hinge on not being able to trace a phone call. Do you know how long they had to keep you on a phone to trace a phone call? Every now and again, you'll see a lazy screenwriter still slip that in. But man, if in 2024, if someone calls you from anywhere, even if you dug an old payphone up, by the time it got to your cell phone, the cops would already have you on the ground and in handcuffs. There's no hiding anymore. Cameras are everywhere. What do you mean the bank robber got away? These cameras can recognize how you walk, much less facial recognition software. Superman would not be a movie or a comic, or there would be no Clark Kent with facial recognition software. Were you out with Superman last night? No, I was out with Clark last night. Then all those pictures would just be pre-tagged Superman, and then Lois would start looking through both those pages and you know what I mean? You can't have amnesia in a movie anymore. Oh, who am I? We'll find you 47 different ways. Blood type, DNA, dental records. What do you want? Ancestry.com. We have you. Your information. I don't know how you keep a baby off the grid anymore. You would have to have it in a cabin in Alaska. Is that far enough? In Kazakhstan, in the deep, deep, deep mountains somewhere. And then that baby would and even then there would be satellite imagery of that baby's birth. 100%. There's nowhere you would have to have a baby under an underpass in Kazakhstan. No, because if there's an underpass, that means there's an overpass, which means there's civilization, which means there's probably a camera. You would have to have that baby in a cave in Kazakhstan at night. And the baby may not make it because it'd be cold, because if you lit a fire, the satellites would see you. So many things break down. Remember when you could run through the airport and find the person you loved before they left forever? Remember when you could leave forever? You can't go in. You'd be tracked down. Oh, it'd have been so much fun in the days of D.B. Cooper to just disappear like that. They'd find you before you hit the ground with your little parachute and your bag full of money. D.B. Cooper. Don't bother, Cooper. We got cameras. Jesus. All right. What am I talking about? I need to go. I'm writing this book. I'm still working on it. I'm discovering a lot of things. And one of the things, I'll say this, writing, one of the reasons we should write things down, be it a journal, be it a novel, fiction, nonfiction, memoir, whatever, personal essay, pick your genre, is because it allows us to choose the final version of things, the definitive version. And this has a lot of weight. It's what we carry around. And I think about this because I was reminded recently of the way people change their stories. And it's not what it sounds like. All the stories we have in our head, we come up with a version of them. And many times when we pull that story back out, I've probably made this point, we edit it a little to fit the scenario because maybe we're using it to empathize, or maybe we're using it as a retelling, or for whatever reason the stories might be in therapy. Whatever reason it's coming out, you're telling a newish version of it that's your best recollection of the last version you packed away, right? So with something in print, you're sort of putting a hard stop on your ability to continue to edit that part of your life. You're giving it some finality, closure, which is a weird thing we're all kind of looking for when it comes to certain parts of our past. So for me, that's kind of what I've been up against. But it makes me laugh at the previous versions of, I've heard stories from two people recently that made me laugh. One was a story that I didn't realize until halfway through the story that I was there for. It was told in such a way that I had been, not that I had a big part, but I had been basically edited from the story. So I'm listening to it like it's a third-party story. And I think we both, it's an old friend, I think we both realized at the same time that I was in the story he was telling. And he kind of pulled you know what I mean? You were there. And then the story kind of reincorporated me, but it just made me real. I was like, oh yeah, his version of this story doesn't have me in it. He's told this version, and it makes him, I'll say a little bit more the hero. It's not one of those scenarios, but it's an interesting thing because that's how we edit stories. We remove the extraneous. If there were, I talk about this in writing, or in a joke, in a story on stage, if there's two people in a scenario that you're with, and you can narrow it down to one person and give them both the lines, and it doesn't change the story because you need those two people. If you can just do it with one, you do. So I understand that people probably edit their own stories that way. It's just interesting to have the story told back in a way that I was kind of hearing it for the first time, even though it was my story. It's what we do with these memories. Somewhere back there is a truth that we both experienced. Neither one of us remembers it. And then another person all in one day. I remember she had a very small incident. Someone had bumped into her, and I think her camera had fallen out of her hand. I wasn't there for the original interchange. It was at a concert many, many years ago. Well, then I heard her tell the story of what happened a few minutes later to our other friend who had come back to meet us, and the story was a little different than I'd first heard it. And then when the rest of the group got there, the story was retold again, and it had gotten worse. So not only had the girl bumped into her, she'd bumped into her violently. Well, that's where it got a little more ambitious the second telling. By the third telling, the girl had shoved her. Not only had the camera fallen, she had taken the camera, snatched it, in fact. And by the end of it, you thought that lasers came out of this girl's eyes as she was ripping the hair follicle by follicle out of her head, and it hit her with a motorcycle and then started it up and ran over her face and then broke the camera and then said something racist. I think what she said, I can't even repeat what she said, but she equated the experience to what other people who have gone through traumatic, like real traumatic experiences might have experienced. And I just remember that I laughed about that for about 10 years. Stories are funny things. We all have them. I try to edit mine appropriately. I try to file them away appropriately. And I try to write the final versions of them as close to the truth with both a capital and lowercase t as I can. Lots more me soon. My dates are at sladeham.com. They are scattered throughout the fall. Many of them are very unique and very fun dates. I hope to see you at some of them. Cheers. At the very least, I'll see you back here.